Hi, I'm Ann Coulter. Welcome to my Substack. I have my friend, one-time lawyer, the brilliant Canadian activist lawyer and writer, Ezra Levant. Welcome, Ezra.
And it's great to see you. Congratulations on the Substack.
Thank you. It's loads of fun. I get to talk to people like you after you write very thought-provoking articles in the hated newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. And I'm attributing the location of that great op-ed we're going to be talking about, the enthusiasm, or at least not negativity on Trump's tariff threat, to the fact that you had to get it into the Wall Street Journal, and they love tariffs to protect their Wall Street friends. But your main point, that what Trump should be doing is trying to buy the Alberta oil sands. Okay, describe your argument and describe why we should be doing that.
Sure. I don't know if a lot of Americans know about the Canadian oil sands. It's just what it sounds like. It's sandy oil or oily sand. And it was always there. It wasn't until about 25 years ago that we figured out how to economically get the oil out of the sand. And then, ta-da, suddenly Alberta's oil sands have more oil than any country in the world other than Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and it's just north of Montana. So every year the U.S. Fifth Fleet spends about $50 billion patrolling the Persian Gulf sea lanes. Why? To protect OPEC conflict oil. And my thesis is, come and get the ethical oil. Come and get the oil that, by left-wing standards, it's the fair trade coffee of the world's oil industry, right? It's peaceful, it's environmental, it treats workers right, it's civil liberties. Like, it's all the things that liberals claim they care about, and it's just right north of the border. Now, that's the liberal case for the oil sands, ethical oil, I call it. But I think Donald Trump thinks by a different measurement. He thinks America first. How can I get America ahead here? And when he's talking about putting tariffs on the oil sands. The trouble is, you put tariffs on, let's say, a Honda plant in Mexico. Okay, they're going to move to a factory in the United States to sell those cars to the United States. It makes sense. You can move the factory. But you can't move the oil sands. It's where it is. So a tariff is not going to move it to the States. And who's going to pay that tariff? Well, the U.S. refineries that are buying the oil. And by the way, the companies making that oil are either American-owned outright, or they're Canadian companies whose biggest shareholders are U.S. pension funds. So it's American every side of it. American workers, American investors, American owners, American customers. It just happens to have a zip code a couple hundred miles north of the border, but you wouldn't even know it.
Right.
So I'm thinking,
was this, incidentally, was this the oil that we were going to get from the Keystone pipeline?
yes. I mean, there was some oil from Saskatchewan's Bakken geological formation, but most of it would have come from the oil sands. On day one, when Joe Biden became president, he canceled that pipeline. It was almost done being built, Ann. And that pipeline's about 800,000 barrels a day. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but do the math. If it's about $75 a barrel, 800,000 barrels a day, that is tens of billions of dollars a year. And every barrel you buy from Canada's oil sands is a barrel you're not buying from Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Venezuela, whatever. And so my vision is, I was talking to the premier of Alberta. She's the most pro-Trump or Trump-friendly politician in Canada. She actually came down to the inaugural. Can you imagine? And like in Canada, you can't actually wave a Trump flag. You'll probably be arrested. But the premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith is her name. She loves freedom. And it's sort of like she's the premier of Texas, is what I would describe it as. So she's as Trump-friendly and America-friendly as you get. And she is not engaged in any bad behavior towards America in the last few months. She says publicly, and she confirmed to me, that she wants to double production of oil in the oil sands. Now, you know who else is sniffing around the oil sands, Ed? I know.
Yeah, you were saying. Okay, go ahead, and then I want to ask
China. In fact, the People's Republic of China, they're scouring the globe for oil. I mean, they loved it when the West put sanctions on Iran because they bought Iranian oil on the black market for cheap. But they actually bought one oil sands company about 20 years ago, and they want more. And my view is, here's the America First plan. Lock in the oil sands under the USMCA. there's a special sort of side letter that guarantees America preferential access to that oil. Okay, well, how about buy it all? And I mean buy it all, 170 billion barrels. That's 50 years worth of oil if you double it. So there's so much there. And I did the math, that's $13 trillion. Trump likes talking about trillions. So if you get he's a real estate dealer too. He's talking about Panama, Greenland, Gaza. Okay, those are all quirky ideas. Greenland's a pretty good one actually. But how about get all the oil from Canada without the hassle? Like he's been talking about Canada as a 51st state, and I know he's just yanking Trudeau's chain. But if you actually had Canada as a state, it would be in the electoral college, it would be like California. It would go Democrat every time. There's the French-English bilingualism. I remember when you visited Ottawa, there was a lot of Francais being spoken. So instead of getting all those complex things, how about just take the oil and take it for 50 years?
I'm thinking we take the two Western provinces as our cherished 51st states.
I love when Trump says cherished. And the funny thing about that is Trudeau has never spoken that way about Alberta.
Right.
Never in his life would he say, he has never said Alberta is cherished. He hates Alberta. Now he's gone, but Canada just, well, we're going to have installed a new leader. I say installed because Canadians haven't voted for him. He's just being selected. His name is Mark Carney. He was on the board of the World Economic Forum. He's personal friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman.
Oh, we definitely need those Epstein documents released then.
Oh, yeah. Carney has 3 passports for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Wow.
He was the head of the Bank of Canada, then the head of Banking. I don't think he's lived in Canada for years. His wife still lives and works in New York, but he's returned to be our unelected prime minister. But I'm worried that Mark Carney, like Justin Trudeau, it's in his political interest to quarrel with America.
Yes. Yes. Wait, hold on. I have a lot of things from what you've said. I want to
Sure, let me pump the brakes. I'm too excited to see you again, Ann.
I know. One is, so you're saying that the premier of Alberta, is it up to her that whether it's China or the U.S. that moves in there? I mean, you throw this off. This is what you guys should buy. This is what you should move into. Is it for sale? Will the premier who went to Trump's inauguration say, yes, please save us from China?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, you already have access to it under the USMCA trade deal. I hung out with her a little bit when I was in Washington for the inauguration, and she was meeting with so many political leaders, business leaders, because Trudeau wasn't. Trudeau wanted, he's gone now, and his successor, Mark Carney. I know this is hard to believe, but there's a moral hazard at play here. They don't want a deal. Mark Carney does not want to deal with Trump. He wants the battle, and the more painful, the better, so he can say, look at what big bad Trump is doing to you. Only I can save you. The conservative leader and candidate is too Trumpy. I'm Captain Canada. Evil Trump must be fought. And yes, it's going to hurt you more than it hurts me, but we got to do it. So that's a moral hazard. Trump is used to being the guy in a negotiation who can walk away. But he's not used to being in a negotiation with someone who actually prefers not to get a deal. So that's the one thing that makes me nervous.
But you guys have elections coming up. And I know, I think you alluded to this in your op-ed, but a lot of people have been waving this poll around, claiming, I think falsely, that since Trump threatened Canada with tariffs, suddenly the Conservative Party went into free fall. But really, when the Conservative Party went into free fall and the Liberals started ascending was the day Trudeau announced he was resigning, which was like January 6th. That was before Trump even came into office. So I mean, your country voted for Trudeau, but enough of them hated him that they weren't going to vote for him again. And once he resigned, well, then Liberals can go back to being Liberals and support whomever the Liberal candidate is. But the Conservatives are still supposed to win the election. And when is the election again?
Because it's a parliamentary system, the election could come sooner. It should happen by October, but I think people think it's going to happen in the next month or two. You're right. Trudeau was so despised after 9 years of wreckage. He was hated. He was, if you can believe it, there was a moment in time when he was lower in the polls in Canada than Donald Trump was in the polls in Canada. And Canadian political opinion hates Trump. Like, he was hated. So when Trudeau left, immediately the Liberals sprung up a bit in the polls because nobody was better than that somebody. But I've been following very closely this new Mark Carney, liberal leader, who's going to be installed as our PM very shortly. He talks about Trump more than he talks about Pierre Poilievre, the conservative
Right.
leader. There's a bit of a vein of anti-Americanism in Canada, always has been. Trudeau's father, Pierre, he would hang out with Fidel Castro. He would visit the Soviet Union and China with his children and say, this is the land of the future. Like, there's
Is
something.
Pierre Fidel's son?
You know what? There's a
You
lot
know
of.
that's a rumor all over the internet.
Oh yeah, and compare the photos side by side. I don't have positive proof of it, but boy, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. And if you look at how handsy his mom was with Fidel Castro, and if you remember that his mom was very familiar, let me say, with everyone at Studio 54 back in the day. Unfortunately, Justin Trudeau's parents hated each other, and they did a lot of things to hurt each other. And I'm not rejoicing in that. I'm just saying.
No wonder he's so screwed up.
You can watch complete episodes of Unsafe with Ann Coulter by subscribing to anncoulter.substack.com. That's anncoulter.substack.com. You can also listen to complete episodes for free at Ricochet.com. Choose Unsafe from the pull-down menu at the top of the page. That's Ricochet.com, your home for civil center right conversation on the web.